Tonight on Nights.
Now here's a good show.
We got.
We're back with Sunday Nights Talks, and I'm Joe from the Brothers Kryn. Here with me is the Highlandian and Black Knight. How you guys doing?
I seem to be stuck in outer darkness.
Yeah, you're surrounded by darkness. I mean, that's
It's kind of the norm in Canada, so dude, you're in good company.
yeah.
I don't know. I was starting to wonder, is this what hell looks like?
No.
No.
It's Justin Trudeau's. It's Canada. Like, dude, you're in hell. I mean, Hitler's
hey,
France and
by the
Germany
way,
would be preferable.
wasn't he by popular demand renamed to Third O?
The
Who?
what?
Third O, not Trudeau. Third.
Turdo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Turdo. Yes. Everybody calls him the Turd. There's a few more colorful names for his competition.
The most famous blackface prime minister in history.
Yeah. But the worst part is the only libertarian party out here actually recently bent the knee. And,
Yeah, because they've been infiltrated.
well, sort of. The leader of the party, Maxime Bernier, recently decided he was tired of being a political outcast and wanted money. So he decided to start recruiting Hindus into his party and basically just selling out the native Canadian population, French population.
So
it's
not
made-
only did he bend the knee, but he licked the boots.
Yeah, but funny enough, Trudeau has actually started to turn against the woke agenda a little, so that they've had a weird reversal. But that's verbally. Like, Trudeau's not
Too
actually.
late.
Nobody believes him. But the
Oh,
funny
heck,
thing-
no one believes him. Heck,
Yeah,
nobody
it's-
believed Kabul. That's how we didn't elect her.
They began did you see they began removing their pronouns from their Twitter profiles?
Yeah, because the ideology has failed.
But it's too late. It's too late. They will be forever branded with those fucking retarded pronouns.
Exactly.
They will drag them into fucking obscurity. They're
Yep.
like shackles, like manacles.
And it'll be branded into them so that even God will look at them and go, like, seriously?
Ew.
Yeah. But
Jesus will be like, ew.
yes. But yeah, here in Canada, in a lot of places, there's now, interestingly, Maxime has become even less popular. And, well, he's even more disliked than Trudeau because people can stomach an enemy but not a traitor.
Oh yeah. Traitors.
And the funny thing is,
If you remember, like what Suleiman did
Mhm.
when one of the traitors opened the gates to one of our biggest cities, he gave the traitor like the gold that was promised to him, and then promptly executed him, like
Mhm.
chopped off his head, like, and he
They
turned
took the
around
gold
and
back.
they took the gold back and said like, this is how you should deal with traitors. Like, if they betray their own, they will fucking betray you later
Yep.
on.
As Cicero
Exactly.
said, a city can survive its enemies but not its traitors
Mhm.
from within. Although the Canadians themselves have, in a lot of places, sunk into a kind of state of despair and anger because we have no political parties except those in Quebec, which are willing to defend. Well, they primarily defend the French, but they're willing to defend the Anglos. All the Anglo-Saxon parties have turned traitor and have sold out, all of them, to a man and women. There is not one province ruled by a single party that has any loyalty to our country. The one with the most loyalty is Legault, over in Quebec, but even he hates the Québécois. But the other parties, he's trying to hold on by his fingernails to his position, but he fears, and he has warned, all the other parties are secessionists and pushing for a Québécois military and currency. The minute that happens, Ottawa is over. And he's warned a few times, something's going to have to be done because the other Quebec parties, most of them are not friendly towards the Uniparty out here. So the trouble is, on the other hand, our deep state is basically appointed. There's a reason Canadians are starting to say selected, not elected. And our deep state, which is the American state, so our prime minister or regional governor is appointed to us by the U.S. So when Americans vote for their president, remember, guys, you vote, those of you in the U.S., you are also voting for the Prime Minister of Canada. Our votes don't count. This is a fact, and we've had problems with our voting whenever it's contradicted the U.S. desires in the past 20 years. So this has been a major pain, and it means Canada cannot have its own nationalistic policies. So always it'll be at the heel of superpowers. On the other hand, it's breeding a lot of rage and hatred for those in charge. So, okay. I'm just bringing it up just more as that's the interesting
what they say that the stinkier they are, the higher in their eyes, and then
sounds like a lot to process.
Yeah, the harder they smack back into the ground when they fall.
Yeah, and honestly, hopefully with Trump in command and with upcoming conservative who's woker than Trudeau but weaker than him, hopefully this will mean that Trump will be able to appoint decent policies for Canada because he does need Canada's resources.
Yeah, Trump to do anything at all.
Oh yeah, we especially
need to deal with the obstructionists and the resistees, the saboteurs. Otherwise, like he may say a lot, but they will sabotage everything. Any well-meaning policy that he will propose. They will stab him in the back. At least now he doesn't have traitors like Mike Pence.
Yeah.
Barr.
Yeah. Pence was a real Benedict Arnold.
Yeah. It's interesting that he's in a similar position as Reagan in 1980. But what's interesting about Ronald Reagan is that Reagan tried to do a lot of good for the U.S. He did a lot of bad around the world and some good. But Reagan overall was a really powerful president who he had guts and he had gumption. And Reagan, it's hard to, you look at a lot of his, what's interesting is that it's a lot of the people who came after him or during his term who are now who melded with the deep state. And I would argue what's so interesting is that they've controlled the elections up till today, but 1980 seems to have been a blip where they didn't control the elections enough because Reagan seems to have swept in to the alarm and shock at the time of the deep state at the time. And yet, and yet you've got now Trump doing something similar. Although Trump's only got the one term left. Although if he pulled off an FDR, he could have another 2 terms. So,
Good luck.
Well, technically it's legal. Anything is legal.
I mean, they will rather cut off their balls first. Well, okay,
Well,
Now that I think,
yeah,
now that I think,
they've already done
I
it.
just saw that in an Italian Euro crime movie with Chris Mitchum, the son of Robert Mitchum, where he's an Italian mafia movie where they actually did that before they killed somebody. It's not a pretty picture to think.
Well, bear in mind, technically, this is part of their religion, so
yeah.
it is something they would do. So you're going to need a better example, Black Knight, because they would probably do it not to spite Trump, but just cuz.
Yeah.
So what's your next example?
They will vow to never have sex again until Trump is out of office.
Well, that's because they wish they were having sex with you.
That too kind of doesn't sound bad.
These people
Doesn't
are
sound
swearing
bad
off.
at all.
They're the crazies. Let them swear it off, and if we get a bonus and gets in for 8 years, I mean,
And now,
they just
by the
won't
way,
be breeding in
now-
record numbers.
Tom, do you know what the new trend on TikTok is? Like they're bringing back the masks, like the chicks, the so-called lip chicks. They're bringing back the masks, the face diapers.
People aren't going to go for the face diapers. They're tired of them.
No. They will be wearing them in protest.
Good for them. They're you know what? You ought to distribute burqas.
And I reserve the right to consider them crazy.
Yeah, like this is why I actually believe Trump should make like his first executive order should be the reopening of lunatic asylums, not just in the U.S. but throughout the empire. Like let's
I don't
standardize
think there will be enough lunatic asylums. Like they'll have to build new ones.
Okay. Well, hey, that creates jobs.
Now, you got to admit that one area where things screwed
True.
up was closing down those mental health institutions, because all those people, the moment he closed them down, they all poured out in the streets, and it just became the beginnings of what the problems we're having today with the sanctuary city crap.
Yeah, and they also giving them the suffrage is also not very wise because, but I have weird ideas because I think that now in the 19th century, Britain and France had a policy where I think it was primarily per family. Like, yes, I think it was only if you only own land, you can vote. So, and women could own land, but typically it was a household that owned the land. So when the husband or wife, if the wife owned her own land, would go out and vote, it'd be as a family. So you'd basically have them, when election time would come along, they would have to discuss amongst themselves, what do we want for policies? Like they'd have to sit down, talk, decide, have a rational agreement about it, and then go out, vote, come home, have dinner, and do whatever. What's interesting about this way of doing things is that it's a family, like families would vote, not individuals. And I think that granting the suffrage to individuals is a bad idea. Granting the suffrage to families is a good idea. Maybe I'm crazy, but I just think
You have a point there.
like
I don't know, Joe. Have you seen some of the families in this country? They're as divided as a World War III. Good luck trying to get any votes out of them.
Yeah,
Well,
but
not
that is a result. That is a result of previous
battle of the
policies.
sexes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess it's just that I look at it like whenever I visit Quebec, France, and Japan, the couples are usually on the same page. And the destabilizing factor in a lot of those elections is that the husband, the wife, and whomever will go out and vote together for the same thing. And the problem is, like the problem is when you consider that the CIA control the elections, so that there's something fishy about a lot of the results. It's just when you consider how passionately, well, okay, the leftists would say racist French people are, and then France, like there was polling data done, and 90% of France wanted to vote nationalistic, but then the left wins. That's like, and they tallied the votes in the last election.
Wins in quotation marks.
Yeah, it was like, what the hell? How did Macron still win and have access to. Well, okay, we know there's Marine. She's a traitor, but like the thing is, you've got like how the hell did her, Macron, and what's his name, the buffoon they always work with, the three of them collect 90% of the votes when they're unpopular and hated. Like it's one of those things where, hold on, like hell, Keir Starmer's appointment just when clearly he's hated, and the British people like Nigel Farage, even though Farage is not exactly a nice guy, and has gone on record he doesn't care about England. So yeah, like the entirety of Western elections are up for debate. Although America's recently landslided so hard that, like you can't doubt it. Like Trump won.
Yeah.
Right. But
First time ever, Hollywood celebrities are carrying up on their threats to leave the country if Trump wins. Yeah,
Ellen DeGenerate.
But the reason why they're probably leaving is because they were at a couple parties with P. Diddy, and he's probably going to go into the slammer and worse, and it's going to come out. So they're like, oh, we better get out before the getting's good.
Well, I'll say this. I have a problem with Ellen DeGenerate going to England. My problem is that she besmirches the... Okay, I'm of Celtic descent, so for me, the British Isles and France are basically the Holy Land. So she tarnishes and dirties the beautiful land of England, merry old England, with her feet. The least she could do is relocate to, I don't know, China or the Middle East or something. Like relocate there. Like leave a beautiful country like England alone. It doesn't deserve her to suffer her. You know what I mean? Like England's too good for her, and she doesn't deserve to step foot in England ever. And because that should be pretty much a privilege and an honor, not something you do to get away from the Dawn, which makes him sound like an Italian mobster movie. But anyways, let's now talk about the coolest and greatest American who ever lived, Robert E. Howard.
Yes.
Compare him to the lamest American currently living who can't get over the fact that Trump won, George R.R. Martin.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's incompatible. But if we did try,
he blames his writing lack of writing on Trump, so it's Trump's fault.
Didn't he blame it on fascismus? Like the
Fascism,
specter of fascismus? No fascismus. I cannot write the horror.
Yeah,
the pains.
Well, I once wrote an essay, fascism, Martin most affected or something, and it just ended up like I can bring it up on screen if I can find it. 1 second. I'd have to go to the dashboard. Let's see. I don't want to move from there. Here, I'll have to open up a new tab. Let's see.
By the way, have you experienced any of you? Have you experienced like a glitch on Substack today?
Which one?
Which one? Well, the one I experienced was like a forever loading page, even though I have no trouble with internet. That like everything else is flying, but it's not loading. So it's just like forever loading.
Oh, I had that glitch on Instagram and on Substack.
Yeah. So it's not. You're probably the 15th person that told me about that. It's like, oh boy, do you know about that glitch? And I'm like, the same one I was experiencing. Okay. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, with Substack, much as it's my favorite website online ever, it is a case of, oh, have you experienced the glitch? Which one?
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, I put this behind a paywall just because I figured it's still getting a ton of views, so why not?
Ooh, close to
Paywall.
900 views. That's nice.
Oh yeah, I've got.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can find it. I've got this one which keeps getting views, and I cannot actually explain why the hell it is.
Which one? Ooh,
This one.
yeah.
3,000.
Probably because a lot of people are sharing it. That's why.
I don't know why. Oh wow, this one got me 4 new subs lately.
I mean, the very fact that Martin is concerned about the sex lives of hobbits is like, dude, this guy was clearly went to the Playboy Mansion too many times with Hugh Hefner.
Yeah. It just I don't know what to make of it. Let me open this guy up. Let's see. Yeah. So I probably shouldn't share this, but whatever. There's a ton of people, 900 people who've already seen it. So, Oh, right. I got to get back to Devin Erickson. His wife contacted me for a podcast. I keep forgetting. Yeah, I basically just simply commented, Martin most affected. And right. My main comment was how there's rumors apparently that, there's always rumors that there's going to be a new Game of Thrones show, not just House of the Dragon, but
Again.
Yeah. And this time, he probably will call in someone from Kathleen Kennedy's camp to direct it.
One can hope.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll hire Patrick Rothfuss to write it.
Who's he?
Then he's another writer like Martin who he wrote 2 books in a trilogy, and he hasn't completed a 3rd one yet. It's been like 11 years, and he's written all these novellas and stuff, but he blames it all on Trump derangement syndrome as to why he can't write.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. In their defense, they're thinking about Trump all day, so it probably does get in the way of their writing. And so it technically is. Now, this is not to say that we should be blaming Trump. No. We should be thanking Trump because these books are just trash.
Because I haven't read Rothfuss, but I have heard that he is just like Martin. It's just like all this convoluted text that's like
we call it schlop. Yeah.
But what this
Red Black Knight?
Yeah, schlop. I meant schlop.
But what this means is that in the great battle to make literature, especially mythic fiction, great again, we have Donald Trump leading the charge. I mean, he stopped Wilkesters from writing. So, he's already.
He was introduced in an recently on stage by Sylvester Stallone, who called him the next George Washington.
Huh.
Did you hear about that?
No.
I heard something about Sylvester Stallone
because he
introducing him.
compared him to a mythic figure. Because if you actually look at what Trump has gone through, look at his life. His life is literally like a hero's journey.
To an extent, yeah, but all I was saying was that the most important thing he's done is stop these wokesters from writing, so that he's doing us an immense favor. Because it means the way's cleared for better literature. So, and literature is how,
Yeah,
it is one of the pathways through which civilization heals.
We just need to get Star Wars out of Kathleen Kennedy and Disney's hands, and go back to the old expanded universe. And
I'll actually disagree and say we need it to fade away, because at this point it's become poisoned, and you're never going to be able to pry it out of their hands. They'll die first. But
plus, Elon Musk buys Disney.
I doubt he will.
Why would he buy Disney? I mean,
there's rumors circulating that he has teamed up with Nelson Peltz to downgrade Disney so that he can be part of the
that. Yeah. Sorry. Go on, Tom. I heard about that. Sorry.
To buy Disney, and he really is a diehard fan of the expanded universe of Star Wars and old school Marvel under Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. That he wants to get rid of this, go back to the tradition.
I'm going to be honest. I don't believe in the nerd Musk theory. Like, I don't believe he's actually even read a single Star Wars book. But
he shamed Wizards of the Coast for disparaging Gary Gygax, so he's got at least a little backbone right there.
When it comes to Gygax, I'm not sure I believe he's read D&D either. But I've got one theory. He wants to be popular. It's the whole Caesar thing. You know, I need the people's love.
But he is a huge fan of 2000 AD. Because he loves Judge Dredd.
I've heard of that. But my only thing is, let's not attribute too much to him. Let's be honest. These bureaucrats and these tycoons are technically political figures, but Musk is cruising on popular support. And I'm not speaking out against that. I'm saying, okay, it's part of the campaign. Like, he's got to win the support of men. So what's one of the best ways? Well, men love their hobbies, love their nerddom.
Yeah, I mean, he's literally challenging George Soros right now and pretty much kicking his ass. So that's something to be rooting for.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to speak out against Musk on that one. I'm not, like, attacking him. I'm just saying, yeah. But it is really good that finally there's someone challenging that old demon who's wrecked.
Which his empire is being run by his millennial son, Alex.
Yeah, but thankfully Alex is far less competent. And it's been run into the ground. So
rumor has it he was at a few P. Diddy sex parties too.
Ew.
So his whole empire's in trouble.
Good. But right, and I also ended up having the crowdfund link at the start of this essay and encouragement to people who read this, cough up some cash, because $8 please, because all money will go to publishing Gemstone, which I'm actually going to be revising once I finish my course, and once I also finish a few more chapters to one serial novel that's due in January. Anyways, with this, I did a comparison of Howard and Martin because I figured let's promote Howard a little. And I just wanted to write a Howard essay, but I needed a way to market it. And Martin's always good for a cheap click or three. So 100 or 1,000. And so why not use them? I'm going to turn this probably into a video for my Brothers Hiborian channel. Although I'll have to probably skip this paragraph.
I like that paragraph.
Yeah, I
wouldn't be surprised if he is on that list.
Me neither. I honestly, since I wrote this, I said I'm kind of worried he is, but now I'm like, oh yeah, he definitely is. There's no one who writes about the sort of stuff he writes about and obsesses about in his books, and given the popular financial support and the popular media backing him, Stephen King, and others like J.K. Rowling have enjoyed, I would say I'm pretty convinced at least Martin and King are on that list.
Oh, Stephen King, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I threw away It. I tried to read it, but oh my God. You heard about it?
Yeah, I almost picked it up, but then I got told, yeah, there's actually certain scenes involving minors, and I was horrified, and I ran the other way.
Yes. I got to that point. I was
Ooh.
like, a
I
man
watched the
actually thought this in
sanitized.
his head to put it on paper. That what sick person would do that?
I watched the sanitized TV version when they
How was
showed
it?
it here. Um,
How was it?
eh, Creepy clowns and weird shit. I mean, yeah, I can. I probably shouldn't talk about the clowns because it's linked to other things which are not very YouTube friendly, like
Okay.
ancient history theories, which
Yeah.
people and especially normies they cannot stomach them because it's like the soy is repelling critical thinking. So I will not talk about it, but it was boring. I mean, there were a couple of moments where you got like intense scares, but as a whole, no, I didn't like it much.
Okay. I had thought about doing a review of it for my Nightmare Reviews channel, but I every time I just get bored and not want to watch it, and I just go watch other boring movies. So okay. Um, but I always thought that King, Rowling, and Martin were astroturfed. Because when I read Rowling's work as a little kid, when I read the French translation, I liked it. The French translation was quite good. When I read the English one, I went, "Wait, but this prose is boring. It's crap. And why is everyone obsessed with this?" And over the years, it just seemed like her prose got worse. King, I couldn't like his prose is pretty good, but
Oh, I love his book Salem's Lot.
the thing is, his plots are just kind of dumb. And you have Martin, of course, who's Martin, and so I just wonder. Like I remember thinking, I think in the early 2000s, weren't they just astroturfed? Because you can't really say they're that good. Because if you lend that kind of media support to anyone, let's say a kid who just wrote something down with crayons, of course they'll sell millions or billions of copies. Like you have that much media support behind you.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
literally did a whole South Park episode about that.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and not only.
Mm.
But they tied in Catcher in the Rye with it.
Hmm.
All right. But yeah. What do you think of the Now, this is where in the a lot of my Conan podcasts with other Conan fans and Howard fans, what they've all noted is that there's a distinct chivalric element to Conan.
Oh yes.
Oh
That-
yeah.
That Conan has a tendency to, he never actually attacks or hits a woman or kills one. Um, he doesn't, women and children are always rescued and well treated. There's the fact that Conan um, actively tries to make Aquilonia great again, I guess you could say. I got a shirt to that effect. And there's the fact that Howard made a very distinct point about having his heroes. They all think with the mindsets of their eras, whether Solomon Kane, Call, or Conan, etc. But they all seem to have, like, they all take offense when women and children are harmed. And there's a distinct sense that Howard was at least when I read his stories, I had the sense that he had the same moral structure and values that, say, Tolkien had. Like, these are distinctly Christian stories and distinctly the value system is Anglo-Saxon. Like, you can't get around that. Though the only thing is Howard's stories feel more raw and like this is a primitive world in a way, even as it's a one with glittering towers and whatnot that are higher than, you know, Tolkien's. But Tolkien's are more ethereal with the elves, and yet, you know, the difference is non-humans are frequently villains in Howard's work, or otherwise otherworldly and beyond our ken. In Tolkien's, they could be allies or enemies, but elves are wondrous and beyond our ken anyway. So, thoughts?
Yeah, well, what struck out was if you actually read the progress, because the anthology book that I have of the Conan stories starts with the order of their chronological order of when they were up the story. Daisy, no, I'm sorry, my dog is crying right now. You see there's a natural progression. Daisy.
Well, Daisy just needs love. She needs a cuddle.
Yeah, hug the door.
There is a natural progression I noticed in the character of Conan and also in the writing of Howard, to where by the time we come to the ultimate Hour of the Dragon, had that book been published in his lifetime by a publisher, he probably would have been a big competitor to Tolkien.
Yeah. As it is, Hour of the Dragon has sold 90 million copies worldwide since its publication.
9 million?
50 million.
90 million?
Yeah. But that was up until a few years ago. Now, Hour of the Dragon is starting to outperform, in some places, Lord of the Rings. And...
well, yeah, look where they're taking the Lord of the Rings right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And... but Howard has always been the competitor. But apparently the Black Colossus was one story Tolkien had read, because he was given an entire magazine of sword and sorcery stories, and one of them had one of Howard's. And apparently...
Black Colossus, if I remember right.
Yeah. He made a lot of notations and criticism, and there were only 2 stories he liked in it. One of them he noted, and he made a lot of commentary about. Howard's, he did not make any notes about, like in his copy, because he always annotated. He did not annotate it, but when he was asked by Howard's posthumous editor about it, Tolkien just simply said it was good. Which you got to bear in mind, Tolkien is... I'll actually say something. Tolkien would have taken offense at this, but he's very French in this regard, with this habit. The French we're a whiny species, and if we hate something, we'll talk about it for hours and bitch about it. If we like something,
he did not like C.S. Lewis's Narnia books, and he especially hated Frank Herbert's Dune.
Well, that's because he had taste. But the thing is, I shouldn't do that.
I personally love Dune because I read that book once a year.
I can't. I can't read it. But Narnia, I despise. The first book was good, but the other ones, But Tolkien apparently liked Black Colossus. All he said was, "I liked it. It was good," or something to that effect, which is interesting because when Tolkien did like something, he could either go on for hours or he just quietly say, "I liked it. It was good," which is what he did with Howard. So he evidently thought Howard was quite good. But he admitted on a separate occasion, he only likes to read things that are like, he had developed particular tastes so that he was only reading classics and reading things that he thought were similar to his own work and surpassed it, in his opinion. Which, considering his talents, not many books could surpass his. But Howard is one of them that could run on a similar competitive level. So, yeah. As to Lewis's Narnia, Lewis was a prodigiously talented writer. But Narnia, he wasn't even trying. and Lewis did say quite a few times this was just for money. It was a cash grab. But
Yeah.
Tolkien felt it offensive to try to profit off your faith. And that's what this was to his mind. You took the Bible stories, twisted them, and now you want money for them. You know, like, that's a little insulting. And, you know, this was a source of some disagreement between the two, because Tolkien just thought, your allegory is just you fishing for money. Like, you know, like, what the hell are you doing? Whereas Lewis saw it as fair game. This new genre is a gold mine. Let's make some money.
Yep. Yeah,
So
pretty much.
I would argue in some ways Martin is the heir of Lewis because, you know, let's treat this like a gold mine. Let's profit without writing anything good. And to an extent, Lewis created the problem.
Well, if Martin really wants to really profit, he needs to finish his books.
But he can. But if he really wanted to finish his books, he wouldn't have really killed all of his characters.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, yeah, ain't that the truth? But I actually ran into someone earlier who stupidly said that Howard is very subversive. And
What?
What?
yeah, like, I thought that was, I could not reply because I just thought, are you drunk? Like, I'm really tired. And
Some people, you just don't argue with them.
Yeah.
It's the cringe is too much. You just
I don't know. Michael Moorcock is more of a subversive answer to Howard.
yeah.
But I actually enjoyed those stories.
I guess Moorcroft is.
Moorcock.
No, I refuse to call him that. Moorcroft was one transliteration of his original name. I refuse to say the Hippie version. I will not do that. That's 12 o'clock night.
ah.
All right, Moorcocks.
Okay.
Okay, there. Okay, fine. That I can live with. It's just like I just think what is he doing to his grandchildren and his children? Like, this demands we bully them, because with that kind of surname, you're raising a new generation of sluts or something. Because more, well, we have to be polite because YouTube, but you know.
Well, you gotta remember Moorcocks, or whatever you want to call them, and Martin. They're products of the 60s, the first counterculture generation that set things
Very
up the
good
way it
point.
is today.
Very good point. But Elric is very popular with a lot of people, so there is that.
So is Geralt of Rivia.
Nah, yeah, I don't know much about. Well, I tried reading one of the Geralt stories. I couldn't get past the first few pages. Wasn't my cup of tea.
I've read the short stories, the first two books. They're pretty good,
Okay.
but it's if you know anything about Polish background, it's very Polish in nature.
I can read them, but probably because I'm a Slav.
Can you read them in the original Polish?
No.
Oh,
Partially I can,
okay.
but not in their entirety.
So, but one might say Sapkowski amongst the Poles can be polarizing. I couldn't resist that. I really couldn't. But actually, I've heard a lot of good things about his video games. I just don't have the data space on my computer for them. I really want to play them. Like, I really want to play them.
Yeah,
I don't have the space.
you don't want to play them because they are screwing them up now. Right now, they're reimagining them for the modern audience.
Okay. Well,
enhanced it, like what was the word? Like enhanced editions or something?
I hear The Witcher 2 and 3 are good, but I hear they're trying to gender swap.
Yeah.
yeah. So
And
I have
not
a question.
just that.
Now, Howard once theorized that postmodernist sort of death ideals. Bless you, Tom.
Yeah.
You were saying?
When debauchery is glorified and such, and people become overly passive, this is symptomatic of people becoming overly civilized, and that people have entered into the winter phase of civilization. That is to say, the fourth level of actually, it's not really consistent with the Straussian theory, but sort of not. But Howard's theory is that civilizations have a spring, a summer phase, an autumn phase, and a winter phase, and that the winter is when they become utterly civilized and forget all innate energy and barbarism, and that there's a difference between barbarism and savagery. Savagery is the dark side of barbarism, and barbarism is the positive side, in a way. So, like, I think, associated Charlemagne with the positive, Chinggis Khan with the savage.
There was a discussion that I think is actually recorded in correspondence between him and H.P. Lovecraft, where they had the opposite. Lovecraft had the opposite approach, where to him, civilization is the pinnacle of everything, but Howard was like, no, you're wrong.
Howard said that civilization is an accident, and that it's an impermanent thing, and that it's more common for man to sink into barbarism than for him to achieve high civilization. And in some of the correspondences I've seen with Howard, and going by how his girlfriend talked about him, it seems he had a bit of a middle ground position on these sort of things towards the end. Lovecraft kept to his ideas, but like, bless you.
Sorry.
It's okay. Like, that's the way things are. But Black Knight, what do you think of Howard's kind of philosophy of history?
Well, I would say that he is mostly correct, but there are instances where these, like the cycles that he describes, civilization, not quite, like they can be rolled back, but of course you have to have a fresh perspective, someone coming from the outside who actually knows that reality operates in a different way, and the morons who have been
divorced from reality.
And I actually wrote a bit about civilization which has fallen, not due to effect of like something that they did, but more like of an act of sabotage, and they have turned into, at least a lot of them have turned into debauchery and excesses, while the rest are like just silently observing as their once grand civilization is slowly falling apart until someone who have like stepped away from the brink of their winter cycle, in Howard's terms, like mainly the humans, they have stepped back, they have rolled back, and it's a strange contrast to see that.
Now, I'll say Howard would argue the only one who can restore the civilization to its core roots and values and save it from the abyss is a barbarian, is someone who embodies the core values of the civilization, except who has that barbaric edge, who can do it, who's willing to do things the civilized people aren't, and restore it to its roots, to its tradition.
Or
Funny if you
spring.
in this case, they would be
But-
hard pressed by an external influence to go back and remember their roots and restore everything
But
in
how-
order to survive.
but
one
how-
one interpretation I've read that was described that in reference to Howard, but also to the Book of Revelation, that they're saying that, but when Christ will return in the end times, he will come back as a conqueror, essentially a barbarian, to bring things back to order.
To an extent, yeah. But I was going to say, to counter Howard's point, how do you explain Augustus Caesar? Augustus was very much civilized and not barbaric. And yet he restored Rome. Like, he saved it from the brink. So it is possible for highly civilized men to,
It became an empire under Augustus.
yeah, and it almost doubled in size. Augustus was the greatest ruler in Europe up until Charlemagne.
There's even people comparing Trump to Augustus Caesar right now.
No, Trump doesn't have the intellect, the charisma, the charm, or the talent of Augustus. But he is a talented individual and popular one. But I would argue he's not, like, Augustus was on a whole other level. And the trouble is, Augustus could walk into a room and everybody would basically either hate him, like Trump, or would love him on a level that we cannot even imagine. But he'd also walk into a room and size everyone up and know how to destroy them. And he would be willing to do it. He was utterly ruthless. So I would say Trump is more like one of the Gracchi brothers. He's a firebrand speaker. He's passionate for his people in his state or country.
I kind of have to think he's a lot more intelligent. You're giving him credit for, because if you've been following the news about the situation with confirming the Attorney General, now Matt Gaetz, have you heard about that?
Well, what I said, Tom, was he's not as intelligent as Caesar. I didn't say he was stupid or not intelligent.
Well, I didn't say you said, but I think you're underestimating the intelligence of Trump, because he's literally playing 4D chess with these deep state swamp rats to get around them.
Yeah, but you have to bear in mind, Augustus turned Rome from a republic to an empire, convinced people they were still a democracy, and pretty much ran it for 40 years without almost any challenge. And he ushered forth from an era of utter civil war and barbarism into an era of arts, culture, and whatnot. And he was so successful, he gave Rome 200 extra years of life. So I'm just saying, Augustus was among the top 10 greatest men in history. That I'm not counting like Jesus, for example, but like not discounting God, he was in the top 10 greatest men in human history, and I'm probably amongst the top 10 most intelligent men who ever lived. This is a man who honestly probably outshines Alexander the Great in intellect, who I would argue was smarter than Newton in a lot of ways. Newton was very smart, but Augustus, when it comes to people, knew how to manage them, knew how to read them, knew everything about them.
Newton, when it came to people, was a bit off his rocker.
Yeah, but Newton might have been autistic or something, but Augustus was peculiar. And we know he was peculiar because people write about him after his life, and close to his life, that he was a very odd man, and that he frightened people with how intelligent he was. he was terrifying, and nobody knew quite what to make of him, and this ultimately played to his advantage. But Trump, Trump, people can see he's smart. Augustus, people couldn't until it was too late. But then when they finally realized how smart he was around the time of 30 BC, people were frightened by how smart he was. Trump is very, very clever and crafty, but he also has fatal flaws like narcissism. So the thing is, Trump is a brilliant man, but he does have his limits. And I guess my point is to compare intellectually. I think he's one of the smartest presidents the U.S. has had
Since Reagan.
I was going to say in almost a century. I was going to say like he might be in some ways smarter than Reagan, to give him his due. So if you ask me, is he a great man of American history? Yes, absolutely. But I won't put him on. Like I don't think he's as ruthless as say Julius Caesar. Gosh, no. And I say that as a compliment to Trump. He deserves that compliment because Caesar was utterly ruthless. As to Augustus, I don't think there's been any man as intelligent as Augustus in almost 500 years. Except in this field or that field and whatnot. There are some who might almost be as smart, but in the political sphere, I don't think we've had anyone as smart as Augustus. I don't think even Napoleon was as smart as Augustus. That's how high I rank him. But look at it this way. I think Trump.
But just don't base your
someone who
judgment on
probably-
Napoleon from a Ridley Scott movie.
No. Napoleon was smart, but was also capable of incredibly stupid decisions. And he really should not have sold Louisiana, for example. He was incredibly dumb at a few points.
That was, but for America, that was the coup de grace in our expansion.
Yeah, but for Napoleon sold it for a couple of nickels, and then went off to start a few more wars for no reason. So Napoleon has his virtues, but when you compare him to say Trump, Napoleon's narcissism and vanity was so much more destructive to him. Trump at least knows how to, roll it back a lot of times. So I might say Trump's in some ways smarter than Napoleon, but so I do hold him in high regard, but I also hold him there are figures I think who surpass him in IQ. So yeah, I don't know how I got into that. But Daisy, for example, though, is far greater an individual overall, though. I'm joking. Damn, she's adorable. So yeah, but now what do you guys think of the value system? Because Tolkien went with. Okay, Tolkien values humility in his works. Daisy cuddles in everything she does, and Howard valor, and Martin debauchery.
I would say Martin it's not only debauchery, but outright degeneracy and nihilism.
Better wording.
Yeah, because it's everything is doom. It's like no one can, and it's all of these insidious plots and people stabbing each other in the back, which of course it does happen, but if it was just that, we would have never progressed anywhere.
What's funny is that I remember once, and Tom's probably going to laugh at this. I remember once saying when in university, those in power are not that as stupid as Martin presents them.
Oh yeah,
there's no way, and I was including all the characters in part, like even to that Tyrion character, there is no way they were that stupid. Because, well, like, what will happen if they are? And now I go.
Well, they would have.
No,
They
Martin
would have
presented-
achieved nothing. They would have died quickly.
But I think Martin actually presented them as too smart, because now I'm like, oh yeah, we're run by circus clowns who make like Cersei Lannister look like someone who's a Vestal virgin and who's as smart as I don't know, Isaac Newton. So like,
I don't know. That's like if Hunter Thompson wrote a book about a quest to find a virgin in a whorehouse.
yeah, exactly. It's like, wait, they are that stupid? Oh crap! But yeah, like I know it might seem odd to you, Black Knight, because you came from part of the world where at one time there were these clowns in charge. But like I wasn't in tune with politics at the time, and I just assumed there's no way we're run by people that stupid. And now I go, yeah, they are that stupid. So.
And they are that evil, and they are that degenerate.
Yeah. So
Because that's the point. That's the point.
although I will defend one thing, a civilization in its summer or spring phases, I don't think they have this kind of degeneracy. Because like you compare, let's say, the court of St. Louis, it was not degenerate. It was a beautiful court. Like values and valor and humility and piety were all rewarded and believed in. Charlemagne's court was renowned for, yes, his daughters misbehaved, but it was also renowned for its culture and for its cultivatedness. But you compare that to like Louis XIV, where debauchery was the name of the game. Wow. So
yeah.
like,
Ivan the Terrible.
yeah, you're right. But
I just don't want to even mention them, because it was quite terrible.
The postmodernist elements, so famous stories, yeah. Now I will ask, Tom, do you agree with the assessment that Howard's Hyborian Age and entire mythology is the mythology of Texas?
I believe that to an extent, because if you look at where Howard was coming from during his time, Texas was still rooted in that old school mythos of having been a country that's becoming a country after separating from Mexico, and then joining the U.S., then going through the Civil War, Reconstruction, the Texas Rangers, and all that stuff. Hyboria has the rich history to it that in story scope that Texas has. So in a way, it is a pure Texas it is Texas literature.
Yeah, because when I think of American literature, I think of Mark Twain, Jack London to an extent, but London's kind of associated with the Arctic, so maybe that's not a good example. But I think of Mark Twain primarily, and I think when I think of Texas literature, I think of Howard.
I also think another equivalent to Howard is, but he does westerns predominantly, was Larry McMurtry.
I'm not familiar with him.
What?
I'm not familiar with him.
He wrote Lonesome Dove.
Don't know it. Sorry.
It became a miniseries in the 80s with Tommy Lee Jones and Robert Duvall.
Oh, Duvall? I gotta watch it. Could you send me the title later?
Okay, but check out his books too. There's
Okay.
there's like 4 or 5 books in Lonesome Dove series, but he did his favorite work though was the Barry Bender Chronicles, which was like that period during the 1820s before the Texas Revolution.
Oh, interesting. I'll have to read that. You know what? Send me the guy's name and the title of the movie with Duvall. I'll take a look at that as my entry into his stuff, and I'll do a review of it for my history channel.
But the one Texas author that gets all this praise that I think is so overrated is Cormac McCarthy.
Is who?
Cormac McCarthy, heard of him?
Recently, yes.
Well,
People keep recommending him to me right now. I don't know why.
I would not recommend him at all.
Okay.
I've tried to read Blood Meridian a couple times. It's like
That's the one people keep pushing towards Isaac and I.
that's
Isaac said it's terrible.
it's like postmodern before postmodern came into fashion.
Hmm. And I know that it's terrible because Daisy was shrieking. So just the
Yeah,
mention of
sorry
it.
about that.
No. She's adorable. Like she's a puppy. She gets the right to do whatever she wants. She merits spoiling. It's her destiny. And to quote Palpatine when it comes to her, do it. Spoil her. But now ask Black Knight, what do you think of the idea that, in a way, like Arda and the Silmarillion and whatnot, personifies England, and the Hyborian Age personifies Texas. In a way, this is like a personification of it.
Yes. I would say yes, I agree. The more I reread some of like the I have like segments of the Silmarillion that I've highlighted, and I think the last time I read one of these was like a year ago, for another essay, and yeah, it's like Tolkien did say something about creating the new legends and myth,
Of England.
and he did so. He did succeed, even though certain goblins are hard at work destroying his legacy. Yet they fail. They fail because it's impossible to destroy.
The worst part is that it's his grandchildren trying to destroy it.
Yeah, that's
Well, I would even
among many other goblins. As so far as to Howard, yes, he the all of that, especially that veneer of valorous barbarism that you have. You cannot forget the different tribes who warred against each other, and some were slavers, others were not. Some were honorable and valorous, others were just like out there for the quote unquote for the goodies. And also you also had this almost Cthulhian part of it all, this with the myths and the legends of the Native Americans, and then the local Tejanos in Texas, about all kinds of spirits, which are oftentimes not just spirits, but also partially material, and then can take physical form just as easy as they can be ethereal. And this is quite deeply ingrained in his imagination and his creative process. Yeah.
Yeah. This might start some debate between you, but I think a person comparison, all he's much old, he's getting his sunset years now that's comparable to Howard and Tolkien. I'd say it's George Lucas.
He is well. Okay, I once called Lucas the Tolkien of science fiction.
Space fantasy.
Same thing. The thing is, though, I think that Lucas was the greatest creative mind of science fiction of almost ever. But I think the trouble with Lucas is that you had a fan base that became fanatical in a way. And when he made the prequels, arguably they're of greater quality than the originals. And this is, without a doubt, I think, a fact. But the problem is, like, you had an entire generation of people who didn't want Star Wars to continue. And you also had the media that was against him. They ran counter to the prequels, so he ultimately ended up the most hated person in America. So,
personally, I really enjoy the prequels on their own. But however, one thing I noticed though, that the attitude of the prequels as being horrible is shifting now, because a lot of the Gen Zers, who were real little kids that saw it, really enjoyed it back then, as they're coming into age and entering the workforce, they're the ones that are the real fans of the prequels.
Yeah,
but another thing too, the reason why I mentioned Lucas is because if you look at a time of American and maybe even Canadian history, or North American and history at the time of pre-Star Wars era, it was pretty bleak. With the Cold War going on, Jimmy Carter was president, and it seemed like we were giving the whole circus away to the communists. And it's like Star Wars was like that boost in optimism that set up Reagan as, yes, there is hope, that there is a clear definition between good and evil, and there is a clear distinction between the two. But it's just in recent years, Kathy Kennedy and Disney also have perverted Lucas in not defining what is good and evil, and saying that it's that postmodern evil isn't good or a point of view, basically, and anybody can be good, anybody can be evil.
Moral relativism.
Yeah.
One of the pillars of good old communism.
Which is, I think it's also a sentiment that even writers like George R.R. Martin, I'll even say even Joe Abercrombie falls into.
He's one.
Yeah, bless you.
But I will say that Joe Abercrombie is a far better writer than George R.R. Martin, though.
Not a high bar, because Martin's not. Well, I don't think he's very good.
You read Abercrombie?
No.
I've read his book Heroes. It's grimdark, and is it grimdark or grimdark? Thrones, it's like there was like no clear definition. You know what I mean?
Yeah. A lot of this essay ends up just dealing with a lore, because I was having fun with that. Like I said, I wanted to write Howard, I wanted to write about Howard, not Martin, but I wanted to use Martin's name to promote Howard. And let me have a look at the views again. I really want to see what the views are for this thing because I forgot. I think it's nearing 500 views, which that's getting to be a bit of the average. There was a time that was really high, but now it's getting to be the average. Let's see. Let's see. Just
My
load.
average is like 150. The top is like about 400 right now.
Yeah. Well, okay, it's at 466, which is still pretty good. But it'll probably break 500 before the end of the day. Which for a Martin essay, I guess, is low, I guess. Whatever. But the important thing is, it won me 1 paid sub and 2 free subs, so it did its job. Okay, just checked out the stats. Yeah. Oh, Acheron. Now there's a fascinating empire. I would have loved to write more about Acheron. Man, we really need some.
Acheron was like the dark time.
Yes, but
it's beyond the dark time. It's a really shitty dark time.
Well, what I was going to say, though, what I want from these... The problem I have with the Conan pastiche novel stuff is they've basically run the character into the ground, and we have so many Conan stories. Almost too many. But I just think we need more Cull stories. We need Cull pastiche novels. And we need... Because, it's right... Like, Cull's right for the plucking in terms of stories. But it'd also be great if they could set up maybe a few novels set in the fall of Acheron about the barbarians who overthrow Zaltotun.
Well, I also would think, too, what would be a good thing is because I imagine, though, that if Howard had not taken his life, maybe if in the future he would have written novels, a whole history about the fall of Hyboria.
Well, he already settles that in his essay with the
but that essay was not published till after he was dead, which kind of was like the groundwork to what he was laying for the future of more stories. I would like to see some authors of good repute, maybe even some Iron Age authors, if they get in good with Titan books, to
I don't want that.
About not just Cull stories, but about that talks about the fall of Hyboria.
No, that'd be too postmodernist for me. No, I don't want that. The trouble is, we know how it goes. You have the Hyrcanians and the Picts destroying everything. We have the Cataclysm. We know how it ends, and I just think it's better in essay form to actually show the characters actively running everything into the ground and destroying everything the way they do. It's like watching Aragorn's dynasty collapse and destroy itself in the New Shadow. We don't really need that, I think. And Tolkien got started on that, but then thought, no, I shouldn't write this.
Oh, that's right. He did write something. He was going to start writing something like that, didn't he?
Yeah. But then he said no. It would be a cheap thriller novel. And he said, no, this isn't right. And Tolkien was brought... Like, I kind of view it almost as, like, a moment of temptation with Satan. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that makes any sense. But on a spiritual level, he was shown you can make so much more money, if you just destroy the legacy of Lord of the Rings. If you destroy it, you can probably make more money and whatnot and milk this. but it would be destroying, spiritually your life's work up to this point. And I think Tolkien backed off from the precipice and said, no, that's not good. I should not write that. Some books you don't write. And I just think with Howard, I would like to see books on Conan's son, who becomes a great ruler himself. And his equal. But we got to bear in mind, about 2-3 generations later, the Conanian line becomes full of depravity, cruelty, and whatnot. And then we've got the end of Aquilonia at the hands of the Picts and the Hyrcanians. And I just think, do we really, really need that? Do we really need to see Conan's line perverted? Doing things like you'd see in a Martin book, and ultimately just see Howard's Hour of the Dragon deconstructed.
This is like even on a subconscious level, like normal people do not want to see that because we already see it in real life. Why the flying fuck would you want to see that in our inspirational fantasy? No.
You got a point there.
But I think there's room for, now just hear me out. I think there's room for going into, for example, maybe like the reign of Kull's son, and then maybe having a story of Old Man Brule having to act as regent for Kull's grandson or something. And where you have Kull's grandson who grows up to be someone who hero worships Brule, and where it's like Baron, like Wolf and Cub, with Old Man Brule having to protect, an underage king. So I think if you were to go in that direction, because Kull, it's a lot more open-ended in a way. There's a lot more options. But we know the Cataclysm strikes 200 years after Kull, thereabouts. So in that regard, we could still have some good heroic stories before the dynasty goes utterly bonkers. And, the legacy could be honored. But we also got to bear in mind, Kull is hypothesized to be an ancestor of Conan, and it's hinted at very strongly. So, and Brule is also strongly hinted to be an ancestor of Conan, but at least I've read theories about that. And the thing is, I think, like, let's expand the mythos beyond Conan, and beyond the bikini-wearing slut running around in Hyrcania. And I think the mythos could be expanded, but in a heroic, inspirational, aspirational manner, like Black Knight put it. But I do think some of Howard's successors did a great job with that. Some of them didn't. Yeah.
Well, I do not give good credit to Robert Jordan for what he did with Conan.
Okay. Well, you know more than I do about that, so I can't judge or argue.
Reading a Robert Jordan Conan is like watching an 80s Roger Corman's fantasy movie starring David Carradine, if that gives you an idea.
I have no idea of any of those references, sorry.
All right. Black Knight, you familiar with the show Kung Fu?
Yeah, sadly, I am.
David Carradine. Well, he did a movie in the 80s with Roger Corman where it's basically Yojimbo, but in a fantasy setting, like a sword and sorcery setting. But his name is Cain. Instead of C-A-I-N, it's K-A-I-N. But there's every scene is full with you senseless, topless women and debauchery and all kinds of stuff. And David Carradine literally looks like he is drunk the whole time. It's
because he was.
What?
Oh, wow. That sounds horrible.
Yeah.
No. And the premise has good potential, but man, it is they just ran it into the ground.
Yeah, they Hollywoodized it pretty much.
Okay, so that's what
It's not
Robert
what it
Jordan's
is.
Conan is.
For the record, that David Carradine movie is called The Sword and the Sorceress.
Oh, I've heard of it. Okay.
Not the Sword and the Sorceress, the Sorcerer, which you're thinking of the Albert Pugh movie, which is good. I'm thinking of this is a different movie. It's called The Sword and the Sorceress. I think.
This B movie, like that was part of the barbarian craze when after like the first
Conan the Barbarian movie.
Well,
Yeah.
the movie was to make a good point though. The Sword and the Sorceress was one of like dozens of sword and sorcery knockoff movies produced by Roger Corman and his New World Pictures to capitalize on the success
not
of
just
Sword
not
and the
just him,
Sorcerer
yeah.
and Conan the Barbarian and the
Yeah,
Beastmaster.
you remind me of there were like all sorts of directors and screenwriters who made them even in Turkey.
Now,
Yeah.
And don't watch that movie. It's no, just no.
Which movie?
There is a Turkish knockoff barbarian movie.
I think I know which one you're talking about, but I haven't seen it. But judging from you, I'm not missing much.
No, you're not. No, you're not. I mean, in defense of their movie industry, they make nice and quite good like historical drama movies, like excellent with great production values,
Oh God, we had
great
some good, like,
acting,
we had
perfect sets. Like they're
Ben
great
Hur,
at
the
it.
Ten
Great at
Commandments. In the 60s, we
But-
had El Cid, which was all filmed in Spain. And then there was a really good movie called The Fall of the Roman Empire with Sophia Loren, which was ripped off into Gladiator years later.
But the
how
problem
is
with
the Fall of the
with-
Roman Empire movie? I've heard it's good.
It's the same exact plot as Gladiator. But
Okay, but that
Different.
doesn't tell me if it's good or not.
just
it's
look up the
it's
movie.
massive. It's massive.
It's a massive, like almost 4 hours long. I'll be back,
Oh,
guys.
that sounds cool.
It's massive. It was a time when they had like a shit ton of extra money and resources to just make these like ginormous giga ultra insane epics and most of them worked. They worked because like they followed the good formula, and the actors and the actresses were like the old school Hollywood actors and actresses, and that's why they worked. But there was like a time when they couldn't make them anymore, because everything like was not that cheap, and they didn't have that much money. Like I think Ben-Hur in current money would cost like 1.8 billion.
Well, here's an interesting fact for you about El Cid of Charlton Heston. The producer behind that one, who was a big film producer who did epics, called Samuel Bronston. He was one of the biggest capitalists and biggest wheeler and dealers in the movie entrepreneurial in the movie industry. And he was considered a big entrepreneur, revolutionary for his time. But do you know who his uncle was? Want me to tell you?
Sure.
Trotsky.
Hmm.
His paternal uncle was Trotsky, who ended up getting knocked off by Stalin in Mexico when he got the axe, the pick in the back of the head.
Huh.
So the man who was one of the biggest capitalists, who was had made a huge mark in Hollywood history, his uncle was a big communist that had a part in the Russian Revolution, but met his downfall by Stalin.
They really love killing each other. No one is like as communist as the top party brass, and even the top party brass may not be
Now, I'll
communist
actually.
enough.
Now, in the modern age, though, no one's as communistic as Keir Starmer. So, let's
As who?
the current prime minister of clown minister, we'll call him, of Great Britain. I was
boy.
just kidding there.
But
I
not
will.
far off. They've really gone off the crazy train over there under him.
Yeah, and most of those I talked to over there aren't too happy with Nigel Farage for submitting to the woke. So that's not to the poor English. Poor Mama Britain. She's not doing too good these days. But anyways, Martin claims there's a veneer of chivalry to his world, but I've yet to see it.
No.
But
No, there isn't. No.
yeah. But what's interesting to me is that he has this invasion of his in his world with the Andals. Mais le club, c'est que no matter where's the quote I used? No matter which part of his world you go to, it always seems like all the rulers act the same. All the characters act the same and with the same moral code and value system. And the trouble with that is that, like, they even use the same proverbs, the same attitudes, the same mores, everything. But if you go to, like, let's say we look at this as 1455, let's say. 1455 in England had very different values from France in 1455. Germany, or the Holy Roman Empire in 1455, had very different values from, let's say, Spain.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You look at Bulgaria at the time, had very different values from Italy or Italia. And heck, if you look at today, though people may not want to acknowledge it, France has very different values from, say, Canada and US. The Anglosphere has very different values from Bulgaria. Bulgaria has very different values from Japan. Korea has very different values than, say, Russia, which has different values.
Korea's gone downhill fast with that 4B feminist movement.
Yeah, I've heard the same. So, like, this, every country, every tribe, every peoples have different values. There's no universal set of values. And, like, this is something that Howard kind of taps into because his Hyborian age is kind of like a European-styled continent.
Oh,
True.
yeah.
But
That's perhaps one of the best points that you made in your essay.
Thank you. But Howard's Hyboria is basically Europe, but you look at Aquilonia and Samaria, there's nothing in common in terms of values and ways of thinking. You look at Zamora, it doesn't work the same way as, say, Hyrcania or Aquilonia again. Numidia doesn't seem to operate the same way as Zamora or the Black Kingdoms. Like, every country has different values, different ideas. And this is where Howard's world building is so profound and beautiful, because he was an anthropologist. He really liked to dig deep into every culture, civilizations, different values, ways of thinking, ideas, and whatnot. And somehow,
Before I forget my point, excuse me for interrupting, but
you do. So,
I do remember it was a podcast, was it? I'm not 100% sure. I think it may have been a podcast, but there was some one of these like mainstream so-called archaeologists. I'm not going to go into like further detail, but he actually called, like he placed Howard in this pot full of pseudo archaeologists who believe in like ancient aliens and flying Atlantis and this and that. And he even said like, oh, he was probably white supremacist and stuff. And
Eric Bogdanovin, who did Chariots of the Gods.
no. It was like some other historian, not historian, some other academic. I forgot. It was like long years ago. But I was like, I watched it and I laughed. I laughed at him. I just laughed. So anyone who is like anyone who likes Howard's world building was essentially a Nazi. We're all racists, you know.
But I think Howard believed that Atlantis was real, but it was a barbaric. Well, if it was a civilized nation, I don't know if he believed it had saucers and
No.
Howard was very pragmatic individual.
High civilization is not what these like raging academics whine that everyone who says like, oh no, they believe in flying saucers and bullshit. No, you idiots, come on. Like, they immediately destroy most of their credibility as soon as they mock people who just propose alternative theories. But yeah, that's just I wanted to say this.
Well, the thing with Howard though is, like I saw someone the other day claim he was racist against, what was it, Africans, I think, again, even though Howard seems to have been a bit of a fanboy of theirs in some of his stories. So yeah, it's like I've read some Howard.
It's bullshit.
Yeah, but actually no. Like the way he presents them is actually very positive normally. Like you could tell he's a bit of a fanboy in that. I wonder if maybe he felt more at home amongst African Americans than amongst other kinds of Americans. And I just wonder about that because Howard, we know he was uncomfortable around a lot of people in his time. He may have been autistic, and he had massive depression problems. But if you look at his presentation of Africa in the Solomon Kane stories and how he treats them as fairly human, like you look at his blacks from Conan stories.
Then do a comparison to what Lovecraft treats them.
Yeah, you get a very
there's a big 180-degree difference.
Yeah, although Lovecraft softened his dislike later in life, from what I hear. So, you know.
But it's important to say that we cannot judge these people by modern standards. We have to look at them as products of their time.
No, I'm actually going to argue, yes, we can judge them by today's standards because they're just a few decades apart from us. Even by today's standards, they come out. I would argue Howard comes off as a very chivalrous, amazing guy and a great guy for anyone to be friends with. Lovecraft, I'd argue, I don't know. I've not read up enough. I'll have to do more research, so I can't judge.
My point was that when it comes to looking at historical figures in both literary or history from different times, you have to look at them as persons of their time and not our days today, because we have this culture today has a big tendency to judge people by the standards of today versus.
I'll actually say yes and no to an extent. Like if you look at the honor culture of medieval Japan, yes, we should judge them based on the honor culture of their time. But that being said, if we do that, there's a lot of their figures that don't come out shining too well because given how stringent Bushido could be. But on the other hand, if you look at so I'm agreeing with you, Tom, but I also think, on the other hand, the liberal values of the modern age have been in effect since really 1793 to an extent. So we're looking at, to an extent, although France definitely has a different definition of liberalism than, say, America. So different values, different systems of thinking and whatnot. But when it comes to, like, I just don't think we should be saying, well, we can't judge Howard based on the morality of today. Well, neither should we judge Hitler based on today's morality then, or Stalin, because, they were men of their times. And I just take that attitude because we do need to bear in mind, we belong to the same time period. We are in the same era, really, in the same 100 years. So I'm just saying, it's just, I'm kind of uncomfortable with the mindset of saying, we're more enlightened, but we're not going to judge. There's just something weird about it to me. I'm not judging them morally. I'm just, well, not Howard at least, but I'm also saying, like, he did very little wrong.
The reason why I say that is because people today tend to judge people morally based upon on a moral standpoint, when I think, no, you got to look at the context of the history and the characters of the times.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, the America of 1920 and 1930 had, for the most part, the same value system as today's America, is my point. Like, there's really largely, because when you read some of Howard's letters, the way he talks about people and the value system that America has, it's the same. Like, it's mostly the same. It's the America he paints sociologically and psychologically is very similar to today's, with the mores, the values, and the ideas. And it's not exactly the same, but it's very similar. I know people will probably disagree, but you could disagree. I don't know. But, like, I was just thinking like how Howard talks about fascists and Howard's disdain for fascism and communism. It's the same as America's disdain for those ideas as today. So in the way he complains about them, about communists and fascists, and they're pure, and how they pretend to be puritanical, but they're oppressive and whatnot, is the same how Americans today will complain about the woke. So that I just wonder if we've really evolved. You can take that however you want, Tom. I don't know.
That's okay.
But on the other hand, well, I will actually ask you, Tom, what you think of the fact that the idea that maybe Conan is chosen by Mitra to save Aquilonia. Do you think this extends from Phoenix on the Sword all the way through Hour of the Dragon? Because he's chosen in Phoenix, but there's no reference really to Mitra being a force in the world.
Well,
the dragon.
Considering the source of what, if you read the notes of Howard modeled Mitra after the Christian God.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Bible even says at some areas that God will use sometimes barbaric and ungodly men at times to achieve some good, which is there is also the big common belief that that Donald Trump was being questionably godly, is being used by God to advance godliness or conversion among today.
Well,
So it could be said that Conan is an ungodly man who is being used to fulfill the will of God.
well, now I'm going to throw a monkey wrench there. Howard mentions in a letter that Conan is inspired by King Saul from the Bible. Same with Kull. The two of them are inspired by Saul and Emperor Zeno from Byzantine history, or Eastern Roman history, if people prefer. I'll just say Greek medieval history. It's just easier that way. The Greek Empire. Not to mention the name Greek Empire just sounds awesome. But the idea of Conan is that he is a King Saul who doesn't fail God, who doesn't turn away. But if you check out the references that Conan makes in Hour of the Dragon, he references that he does believe in Mitra. And he doesn't pray to Crom, really, because Crom doesn't want prayers.
Well, Crom doesn't want prayers.
Yeah, but
People gotta understand too. Like when they watch the original Conan the Barbarian movie, when they see Conan pray to Crom, it's like that's not
Howard's Conan.
That's not Howard's thing.
No.
Well, that whole movie is more like a Cole story than a Conan story on a separate topic.
Yeah, and I will ask you, Tom, just to kind of challenge what you said, if gently. What do you think of the Saul reference and the idea that Conan is supposed to have turned towards Mitra? So maybe he, in a way, has turned towards God and is a godly man by Hour of the Dragon.
Well, the point that I was trying to come across was that
God uses
Conan, maybe in particular, started out as an ungodly person, over time, godly.
I stand corrected.
Because as people age, there's an expression that the younger you are, the stupider you are. As you grow older with more experience, you gain more sense of how things are, and through experience in life. And
that's mostly true. Except for the diehard commies, they get dumber with age.
That's fair.
I've known more than a few
traditionally
really old Stalinists who kept believing in Stalin as if he was a god.
Same in China with Mao.
And then North Korea too.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Yeah.
I know of some Canadians who worship Pierre Trudeau the same way, and I've seen. Well, it's so peculiar to me.
Americans in this country have that attitude towards JFK or even Reagan.
Yeah, I've noticed a Reagan and JFK thing. I've even seen some who revere Bobby Kennedy fairly well.
Oh yeah,
Bobby Kennedy seems like he had some good policy ideas.
Yeah.
I have to throw that one out there. Bobby Kennedy did more to defuse the Cuban Missile Crisis than even JFK. So, it's like it was a joint presidency. So,
that's one of the things that a lot of people do not. I mean, they do not give him credit for that.
Often, rulership, when divided between siblings like that, seems to work better. Like without the siblings killing each other. I mean, when they don't do that. Like you look at Augustus and Agrippa, it worked really well. Those two were sworn brothers, so it worked really well. You've got the Kennedy brothers. I'm just noting something that's a little interesting in history.
There's also a connection made between Nixon and Kissinger.
Oof.
which I kind of turns me off a bit because Kissinger was like the modern architect of our modern foreign policy today.
Yeah, he's the OG neocon.
Yeah.
Kissinger.
But I say that the time of the neocon really emerged when the Cold War ended.
Well, now I'm gonna actually pitch this to you guys. This is a theory I've kind of developed over the course of my life from reading Celtic literature, French literature, and also reading Howard's. And I make a distinction between Northern courage, as Tolkien imagined it, which is a Germanic, Scandinavian thing, and the English are supposed to have it through their connection to Germany in the Scandinavian world, and the idea of Celtic honor, because chivalry and chivalric warfare in the medieval period was much more of a Frankish thing, and even the Scots tried to operate within a context of Celtic honor at first, or chivalry, I should say, vis-a-vis Edward I, and Edward I had no concept of honor and dignity and goodness. So, and I know there's going to be a lot of English who are going to say, well, actually, but no, Edward I was evil. Like, you read up any record of what he did to the Scots, and you read the actions of Edward II and III, you'll see men who are evil and consumed by greed, vanity, and spite and hatred.
Yes, and also curse.
Yeah, and I'm judging them by the standards of their day. And I'm being very lenient when I say these things, because this was the age of chivalry, of honor, and of letting you defeat your enemy. They can sue for peace, and they can sue for their women and children. The Edwards didn't believe in that. They're in for just wiping out the Scots and the French. So, I think but that being said, I think the Edwards had Northern courage. They did have an element of it in them. But I think this is where I think the Celts are a breed apart in a way. They're not Germanic. They're different. We're a different species in a way. There's the concept of chivalry that originates from our people. And the problem is, in war and in culturally, our cultures have generally, like the way Robert the Bruce or Jeanne d'Arc or Charlemagne are presented in our literature or in our conversations and podcasts and whatnot, it's in the context of men or women who have demonstrated piety and honor. Rather, it's almost like that's the way we hold them up in place of, let's say, and yes, the glory, but they're winners. But they won distinction and honor, and they behave themselves honorably, like according to an ideal. At least that's how the stories were passed down to me, and at least how when I talk to French and Scots, it's always in that kind of context. So, and there's a difference in the way our people behave, in the way, for example, the handshake agreement is taken as you can be taken to court if you break a handshake agreement. And I should know, because in Quebec, there were two people who broke a handshake agreement for work with me. And I was told you could take them to court for that. And, but I didn't have the means. But the thing is, in Quebec, handshake agreements, if you break one and you're known to have broken one, you're very liable for potentially tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So people are very careful with these sort of things. So honor is a very important thing, but it's not like there's no honor killers, but you know what I mean. I don't know what you guys think of this kind of the Celtic honor as a concept.
That's it's quite similar to what the Bulgars, the ancient Bulgars had, and the Slavs, and the
Yeah.
Sarmatians, and the Scyths, and like the Indo-Aryan tribes that migrated. So you don't like you don't you don't molest an enemy who fought you honorably, and you definitely gave mercy to the women and the children. But there is one, however, which is when you face someone who is not just an enemy, who is clearly degenerate, evil, does not care about, like, they would not offer you the same honor, and they would just kill for killing sake, destroy for the destroying sake. It's like you don't act in the same way towards them.
Yeah, I wonder.
It was indeed true for the Bulgars and for the Slavs, because there were cases when, especially when
I wonder if maybe Sikkim.
There is even that you can say traces of that in the conduct of how the old South in America conducted itself.
Yeah,
A gentleman agreement. You act as a gentleman, gentlemanly.
the South was colonized by a lot of Irish and Scots. So
Who valued those chivalry and honor.
yeah, arguably, for example, my Celtic cultural values are probably like Don Harper and I have had the conversation where I'm a Scoto-Frenchman, but my values are French, but the French values are closer to the Appalachian Valley or like Appalachian region than like we have more in common with each other than we do with England, let's say. But I think with the Slavs, I've always thought that the word farouche, ferocious, kind of describes them.
yes, that's also true, but they are selectively ferocious.
Yeah, I wonder
Yes.
if maybe
It's not when they fought, let's say, the Byzantines, for example, because at that time the Byzantines were quite like in the degenerate camp, most of
Oh,
them.
until
And
Basil the second came.
oh yeah, and they it wasn't like, oh no, we're just like, okay, we lost, we clearly lost that battle, we'll just surrender, like just like if they surrender, like we'll offer them the same clemency. No, fuck.
Well, it's hard to imagine a Slav surrendering. Like, no, I'm just saying, like I guess the viewpoint I have is there is a thing of Slavic ferocity, of just duck it, like we keep charging. Well,
Mhm.
we're gonna die. Well, we're gonna keep, Well, I guess what I'm saying is, there's Northern courage, which is similar, but when I think of Northern courage, I think of Theoden and Aragorn. But with Slavic ferocity, I think of like Vlad. I think of the Bulgars resisting, the Ottomans. I think of just at that point, it's not courage, but it's single-minded ferocity, and it reminds me of maybe, I guess, a panther rather than say.
We have
Another way I would describe it as in Texas, this was developed after the Alamo, where it says, if it looks like you're going to lose, you take as many of them down with you as you can before they take you down.
Yeah, although the Slavs, I've noticed in history, the enemy, if it looks like we're going to lose, we'll go impale every single one of them that we can find, and we hit them psychologically as well. We inflict the same brutality upon them that we meet them blow for blow, brutal act for brutal act.
Yeah, but it's not against every enemy.
No, the enemy acts with honor. I've noticed the Slavs act accordingly. Like this is
Let's say with against the Ottomans, it was because they've committed massive atrocities.
Oh yeah.
And there was like a point where it was mothers and fathers who actually mercy kill. They were mercy killing their children.
Yep.
Because otherwise they would have been like dismembered alive and suffer.
Now the Slavs that participated, for example, in the 30 Years' War, and there were some, distinguished themselves for courage, but they weren't like they didn't behave like the Swedish and the French did. they were better behaved. Not to put too fine a point on it. They clearly fought honorably against Napoleon when he invaded, because his troops actually comported themselves fairly well. And the Slavs seem to have comported themselves generally the same. It's an interesting thing that the Slavs can behave themselves very well in war, but then, the minute you inflict a needless tragedy, well, knives are coming up. But when you're the crossroads of the world, you need to, I guess, be like that. I guess I just think of the Slavs as like you keep kicking a wolf, you'll learn that the wolf, even beaten, still has fangs and will sink them into your heel. I just tend to think, as much as Northern courage is great, the Northern courage can be broken. The ferocity, I'm not sure. I don't know if that's making any sense.
There is a saying which I use in the Terran Moral Officer Handbook, which reads. Just give me a second. I don't want to butcher it because I'm tired. I think you have parallels, and then there is another parallel in the US, but it basically reads, the free win even in death.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this: whereas the French, there's the concept of chivalry, but the minute the enemy misbehaves, I would say the Celtic honor becomes Celtic savagery, and there's no it becomes not just simply tit for tat, but it becomes like we have to be even more cruel and brutal and whatnot and savage. And in a way that, you look at, you look at how some Irish lairds were operated. When the English invaded and the English said, "All right, we have monasteries, you're not to burn them down," the Irish took the mentality, "Well, you burnt ours down, so we get to burn your convents down and rape all your nuns and drag them off to be slaves." Why? Well, you burned down our monastery, so we can do that to your convents. It doesn't make any sense, but it's just the way we Celts seem to operate, escalation. But on the other hand, there's the understanding, if you're honorable, if you comport, there's the assumption everybody has to comport themselves with honor at the outset. But then if someone doesn't, then the gloves come off. And the trouble with that is, I would argue, that's something Conan has to reconcile himself with at the beginning of Hour of the Dragon. So it's just a concept that started to come into my vocabulary, I guess. The idea of a Celtic honor, but I might be wrong. But I think it's to be distinguished apart from Northern Courage. But I think Northern Courage is definitely a thing. And I think Conan embodies both Celtic honor and Northern Courage in spades. The courage to keep going on beyond hope, but also the Celtic honor that must be maintained and satisfied, no matter what losses and no matter what happens. It must always be satisfied and it must always be upheld to some extent. But although that said, I'd say yeah. Although weirdly, I've noticed Japan seems to have more similar values to Celtic countries than any other country, and in turn, though, I'd say China has similar value systems to. Well, no, never mind. Yeah. Now, what do you guys think of Howard's stories being described as transcendent?
Transcendent in what way?
Like, it's not just for his time. It's like it transcends his era, but it's also something that seems very Christian.
Yes, I see that.
Okay.
To me, Howard is just as transcendent as, say, Tolkien is.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, they're like the top two of the. The ironic thing is that Tolkien was the father of epic fantasy, whereas Howard was the father of sword and sorcery. But they both have in common as far as being transcendent in their.
Yeah.
Northern people give them credit for.
Yeah.
So they're like the apple. It's like comparing an apple and an orange.
That's fair. That's a good. Yeah, that's very true. Let me see. What do you guys think of the notion Martin is like his works are an effort to twist and mock traditional European cultures, peoples, and civilizations?
Oh, I really think that too.
Daisy thinks so too. I'm joking.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think she's adorable. She can keep. Well, I don't like that. Well, I don't want her howling out of pain, but I think she's adorable and just needs another cuddle or three. Sorry, Tom. You know me. I love dogs. So
Yeah, me too. You're in the same camp as me, so you're okay.
I'll be honest. Most of my mythology is really a dog's mythology. I always have a dog or a wolfram in every story. Because my mythology is not for France or anything but dogs. Maybe.
Well, at least it isn't for the
I
bird.
thought it would be for space hamsters and bunnies and dogs and cats.
Well, at least it isn't for the birds, as we'd say.
Yeah. But what? Screw the birds. Screw the birds.
I don't know. They kind of get got the bad rap of those windmills.
Oh yeah. Oh my god.
If you ever explored areas where there's big windmills, it's
I
like
know.
a big bird graveyard.
I know. One of my friends back in the day, she was really into this thing, and she had bought into like all of the World Economic Forum crap.
Yeah, this idea that they're good for the environment. I mean, dude, what
And
about
one
birds?
day, we actually went to the seaside, and there was like a place with windmills, and she was she went ecstatic. She's like, yes, I want to go to the windmills and take a picture. That we're saving the planet. And we actually went there. We went out of our way. We drove like for I think an hour to get there because the roads were a mess pretty much. And we got there, and just like you said, Tom, it was a fucking bird graveyard.
Oh,
It was
no.
horrible.
No, yeah.
Horrible.
It drives that for some reason it drives the whales nuts. You heard about that?
Yes.
And you think we're saving the planet. What about the birds of the air, even the whales of the sea? Come on, something. This ain't right here.
Yeah, you're right. It's just unconscionable the way they're wrecking nature. And they say, well, we're saving it, but they're destroying
No,
it.
you're destroying it.
Yeah, they're destroying everything. It really reminds me of how Tolkien once described evil. Where he said there are different origin points for different kinds of evil, but all evil eventually arrives at the same end road, which is to say, like Sauron starts off more a kind of industrialist force of order, and you have Morgoth, who starts off more a force of, well, chaos. But the thing is, eventually Morgoth is just destroying for destruction's sake. Saruman goes down that path and starts doing the same. Sauron was a little behind the two on evil, but was headed down that road and was starting to do that. And I just wonder if maybe that's what this is, well, let's destroy, nature and the birds and the whales in the sea and whatnot for its own sake. We're just going to destroy these things just cause. And it gives them some sort of sick satisfaction to do it. And there's a reason why people are comparing the current present government of England to Stalin's government. And although arguably Stalin faced more resistance, and that's, well, yeah, so it's just one of those things where I wonder if maybe with the windmills, these monstrosities that blacken the land and desecrate it, it's a sign that these clowns have become every bit as evil as, say, those that excuse Chernobyl, and and who excuse Stalin's many atrocities, or Mao's, or Chinggis Khan's, and because you always have the useful idiots who exist in every era.
Yeah.
They enable in most, if not all cases, the useful idiots enable atrocities and genocide.
You know what the ironic part is? Once they achieve their goals, the useful idiots are always the first ones to get killed.
Yep. You don't have to remind me.
Yeah.
I know. I probably shouldn't say that, but I know about certain places where you could go and see where the how should I put it? You can see the final destination of said useful idiots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what I was thinking of doing, though, is next time I use Martin for clicks, because why not? At this point, he's only good for clicks. I was thinking I would use him for maybe promoting Substack fiction like Therese' fiction, Isaac's fiction, yours, Black Knight, or mine, or something, and just do that just more because at this point, like like I said, he's good. He's useful for clicks. That's all he is. He is clickbait itself, but he's kind of made himself into that with the way he's behaved and the way he's talked about Tolkien and other writers.
Yeah, I will never forget that essay that that you wrote about Martin's like remarks. I do think that was your first essay.
Oh, right, the orcs one. Like where he's like, did Aragorn start genociding? What about his tax policy?
Yeah.
I still wonder what, like, I know what the tax policy was of Aragorn. Tolkien spells it out. He states what it is. But I don't know what the Westeros tax policy is. It's still not clear to me.
You may not know about the Westeros tax policy, but you do know that they are
It's heavy.
yeah.
But
And
like,
they're doing these like.
But what I mean is, I never see the Reach or the Stormlands, so I don't know what the average peasant, what his life's like, and I don't know what the tax policy is in the North. Like, is it the same? I don't know. So that's what I mean. Like, I don't know. And yet Martin, holds himself up. Like, maybe he should write a series of essays on the different tax policies and tax forms of the Seven Kingdoms. I don't know. So, yeah.
Hello?
Anyways, I gotta get going soon.
Yeah, but it's about to wrap
I
up.
think Tom has to as well.
Yeah.
Any closing remarks, Black Knight?
Guys, I got to wrap it up.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, same here. I will end on the note that we probably should had way too much fun trying to compare the incomparable, but
Yeah, a little too much.
it was lots of fun. I may have forgotten a few of my thoughts because I'm a bit tired, but
Same.
I think I was about to mention my humble homage to Howard's
Oh,
work.
Valiant.
Yeah, and I
Made it
forgot.
legal.
I forgot. It's I'll just mention it briefly.
Message me the link.
Yeah, it's
Send me the
it's a
link.
series of very short books, like over 100 pages short, which all star this villain character of mine who is basically a barbarian who hails from a
Bavaria?
quote unquote primitive world, which has been
Well, in fairness, he's from Bavaria, so.
no, he is from Lutoria.
Guys,
Okay.
I got to get
Yeah, I had to
going.
crack that joke. I
I'll
love
talk to you
Bavaria.
later.
See ya, Tom.
Yeah, so yeah, that's
I love
pretty
your-
much the stuff about how it all started. My attempt to bring back to life, bring Sword and Planet back to life a bit,
Oh,
just a bit.
that's a pop version.
It's my reiteration is called Sword and Railgun. because it has a little bit more sci-fi-ish elements, but if you look at it, it's probably around like 70% fantasy or 80% fantasy, and the rest is sci-fi. So it's not that heavy on the sci-fi.
We still need a movie adaptation.
You just look. I'll just give you the link. You look at the cover, and I'll just send it in the private chat.
Yeah, I'll put it in the link in the description when it comes time to post, and I will recommend people also check out my crowdfund or
definitely crowdfund,
or which is now available. I now set it up so that I can do now shipping to countries within the European Union. So Europeans are now able to pitch in if they want.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks. So hopefully that'll draw in a bit more funding, or people can support via upgrading their subscriptions. I highly recommend they do it to both Black Knight's account and my own. So, and as for if you're watching it on YouTube, please do pitch in. We could use any and all support. I'm knowing the algorithm as I do. I highly doubt there's going to be too many subscriptions on YouTube because YouTube is YouTube. So I'm going to be addressing more the Storyfire and Substack crowd, which is probably where most of our views will come from.
Oh yeah.
But until next time, we'll talk next week. Same crew, I guess. Same time, same news, same stories. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.